To be forlorn is to despair, to be alone without purpose. These are the souls drawn into the painting, to the cold, gentle world of Ariandel. Some, like Elfrida, they lost faith in their duty, and some, like the followers, simply outlived that duty. And others, like the Millwood Knights we'll be talking about in this video, had their duty and their home taken from them. Millwood is a land of primitive earth worship, and its fabled knights were known to fight hand in hand with the earth itself. This hammer, for example, with its head of naturally formed stone and an attack that rips the earth up from under you, is symbolic of that relationship. In fact, their chieftain knights, who we disturb in the painting, would actually be more accurately called high priests. Many of their heavy bronze weapons, for example, actually have a modest faith requirement, and they were normally used in sacred rites, not battle. Upon the blades of these weapons, like the battle axe, is this symbol of the ethereal oak, a sacred tree which is clearly at the heart of their civilization. This tree appears on their weaponry, on their capes, on their shields, and even their helmets are adorned with antlers believed to grow from the blessed beast of the ethereal oak. Judging from the horns, I think that would be a kind of stag. Strange, right? It's a very curious tree from all descriptions, and it also appears to be a very bountiful tree, considering they cut from it the horns for their helmets, and maybe even the wood for their shields. And I'm very confident that the ethereal oak is actually a spirit tree, as they're described in other item descriptions. For the word ethereal can mean not of this world, and spirit trees have been referenced multiple times to be otherworldly, the things of dreams. In all the games, spirit trees are actually some of the kindest beings in the series, for with every new spirit tree mentioned, we learn a little bit more about them. In Dark Souls 2, for example, a spirit tree was said to have turned itself into a shield to protect a small, frightened child. In the Sunken Kingdom, we found one that repairs the weapons you hit it with. And even in the Undead Settlement, the curse-rotted Greatwood consumed the curses of the townsfolk at its own sacrifice. They're very selfless, noble beings, considering all the sacrifices they go through, and here, to the Millwood Knights, is this tree so bountiful that an entire society was built around it. Unfortunately, of course, according to the Millwood armor, when the fabled Millwood forest was discovered, it was a vacant ruin. The only thing left was the ethereal oak, stood rotting. It's said that arranged around the rotting ethereal oak, around the basis of their civilization, were the belongings of the Millwood Knights, and they were arranged neatly on the ground. Yet, despite the ruin and the rotting tree, no corpses were found. And I believe the reason the description mentions that no corpses were found is because the knights themselves, their being, not necessarily their belongings, were drawn into the painting. But we'll get to that. So, what caused this? What or who caused their forest to be brought to ruin? Well, we find an answer in the Millwood greatbows, which were crafted and wielded by the knights so that they could face their sworn enemy. This sworn enemy was, and I quote, the Abyss Dragon. And the closest thing we have to an Abyss Dragon, in my opinion, in Souls lore, is the Black Dragon Kalameet, which is an ancient dragon that spews abyss-tainted flame and is known as the bringer of calamity. So, for an Abyss Dragon who brought ruin to the Millwood Forest, I think that Kalameet, the calamitous dragon, certainly fits the bill, don't you? For posterity, I considered some other things. I considered the Pus of Man, because it resembles a dragon, but there are multiple Pus of Man, and they already have a name, and it's not Abyss Dragon. There's also Karth, a primordial serpent, and serpents are known as imperfect dragons, and he's an imperfect dragon who resides in the Abyss. However, he doesn't really fit either. The Millwood Knights created great bows to take down this creature, and, it makes a great degree of sense to think that they would craft great bows to shoot down giant flying beasts, such as Kalameet. And this exact thing has already happened, because it was Kalameet on the receiving end of a great arrow in another forest long ago. So this could be a sort of repeat of that scenario in the same sense that so many other scenarios are repeated in Dark Souls 3. But regardless, right, whoever this dragon was, even if it isn't Kalameet, it would seem that their great bows, they weren't enough to take this thing down. The Millwood Forest was brought to ruin, and according to their captain's ashes, the Millwood Knights lost the forest they called home and began a journey so long that even thoughts of their sworn enemy washed away, replaced by a vision of a cold and brittle wood. The knights, forlorn, were drawn into the painted world of Ariandel, and they likely found a home to wash away the trauma of their past and the terrible things they'd seen. A safe place, at least, until the unkindled ash comes to kill them all, promising fire for Ariandel. Fire for Ariandel. Hey guys, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and special thanks to those who support me on Patreon. Next week's video will be on the Corvians, so I'll see you then.